Nutrition, 5th edition, Chapter 3, Digestion and Absorption by Carrie Erickson. The taste and smell, the beginning of our food experience. You probably wouldn't eat a food if it didn't appeal in some way to your senses. Smell and taste belong to our chemical sensing system, or also known as the chemosenses. The chemosenses include the olfactory, which are the smell cells stimulated by odors around us, such as the fragrance of a gardenia or the smell of bread baking. The gustatory cells, also known as taste, react to food and beverages. These surface cells are in the mouth and they send taste information along their nerve fibers to the brain. The common chemical sense contributes to our sense of smell and taste. Thousands of nerve endings give rise to sensations such as the sting of ammonia, the coolness of menthol, and the irritation of chili peppers. And the cephalic phase response, the sight, smell, thought, taste, and in some cases even the sound of food can trigger a set of physiological responses, and this is known as the cephalic phase response. The gastrointestinal tract, also known as the GI tract, is a tube that can be divided into regions: the mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and the rectum. As far as the organization of the GI tract, digestion and absorption of the nutrients in food occur at various sites along the GI tract. Digestion begins in the mouth, and with the mouth and the esophagus, this is where ingestion and digestion occurs. In the stomach and the small intestine, digestion and absorption takes place. The large intestine also absorption and elimination takes place. Elimination also takes place in the rectum. There are some organs that produce and secrete substances that aid in digestion, and these are the liver, the gallbladder, bile duct, pancreas, and small intestine. And although digestion begins in the mouth, most of the digestion occurs in the digestion occurs in the stomach and the small intestine, but absorption primarily takes place in the small intestine. A little bit in the large intestine, but mainly absorption in the small intestine. Okay, overview of digestion. There are physical and chemical processes. Digestion involves both of these processes. The physical process is known as peristalsis, where you are chewing. That's basically moving things down the esophagus. It's pushing things down. Segmentation actually is the back and forth movement that occurs as far as the physical movement. With the chemical process, there's things such as hydrolytic action of enzymes that also helps to break down the foods. The overview of absorption. Absorption is the movement of molecules across the lining of the GI tract and into circulation. There are 4 roads to nutrient absorption. These 4 roads are involved in nutrient absorption. Number 1 is passive diffusion, 2 is facilitated diffusion, 3 is active transport, and the last one is endocytosis. There is a figure in your textbook. It's figure 3.7 that explains these 4. Number 1, passive diffusion. This uses some substances that easily move in and out of the cells. With facilitated diffusion, some substances need a little assistance to enter and exit cells. With active transport, some substances need a lot of assistance to enter the cells. And with endocytosis, the cells can use their cell membrane to engulf a particle and bring it inside the cell. Then there are assisting organs. Assisting organs include the salivary glands. Saliva helps to moisten the food and also supplies enzymes. The liver produces bile, and then the gallbladder and the pancreas both secrete material into the small intestine to help with the digestion. As far as digestion and absorption, we're going to start with the mouth. In the mouth, food is mixed with saliva for lubrication. Salivary amylase begins the digestion of starch. In the stomach, secretions from the stomach lower the pH of stomach contents and begin the digestion of proteins. Here you can see on the slide that your stomach has hydrochloric acid. That hydrochloric acid is needed to help break down the digestion for the proteins. Also gastric lipase, this helps to help with the digestion of fat. And the intrinsic factor is needed for the absorption of vitamin B12. The small intestine. This is where most chemical digestion and nutrient absorption occurs, which is in the small intestine. With digestion, you've got the bicarbonate, which neutralizes stomach acid, and pancreatic and intestinal enzymes help to digest the carbohydrates, the fat, and the protein. Oops, let me go back here. Okay. With the small intestine, as far as absorption, the fat-soluble nutrients go into the lymph, and the other nutrients go into the blood. So, to put it all together, with digestion and absorption, the large intestine, this basically with digestion, the nutrient digestion is already complete. It does have some digestion of fiber by bacteria that occurs in the large intestine. What normally occurs here is the absorption of water, sodium, potassium, and chloride, which are your electrolytes, and vitamin K, which is produced by bacteria. And the large intestine is where the elimination is going to occur. With the regulation of the GI activity, both the nervous system and the hormonal system regulate the GI tract processes. With the nervous system, nerves carry information back and forth between the tissues into the brain. And with the hormonal systems, there's 4 hormones, major hormones, that regulate the GI function. These are gastrin, secretin, cholecystokinin, and gastric inhibitory peptide. The first one, gastrin, this increases muscle movement in the stomach and enhances the release of hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen to encourage digestion. Secretin, the second hormone, this reduces gastric secretion and motility and stimulates the pancreas to release bicarbonate to neutralize chyme. The third one, cholecystokinin, also known as CCK, this stimulates the pancreas to secrete enzymes and stimulates the gallbladder to contract and release bile and slows gastric emptying. And then gastric inhibitory peptide inhibits the gastric secretions, motility, and the emptying. Next, we're going to talk about the circulation of nutrients. With the circulation of nutrients occurs in the vascular system, which is a network of veins and arteries through which the blood carries the nutrients, and also the lymphatic system, which is a network of vessels that drain lymph, the clear fluid that's formed in the spaces between the cells. As far as influences on digestion and absorption, there's numerous factors that affect the GI tract functioning, including psychological, chemical, and bacterial. Psychological influences include the taste, smell, and presentation of foods that can have a positive effect on your digestion. You smell things and it starts your digestive, those juices flowing. Chemical influence, the type of protein you eat and the way it is prepared affects digestion. An example is cooking food will usually denature the protein, which means it uncoils its 3-dimension structure, and this will actually increase the digestibility of that protein. And bacterial influences, in a healthy stomach, hydrochloric acid kills most bacteria. In some conditions where there's lower amounts of hydrochloric acid, more bacteria can survive and multiply, and this harmful bacteria can cause gut gastritis and also peptic ulcers. Some GI disorders that we see are problems that can affect digestion and absorption of nutrients. Dietary changes are important in the treatment of these GI disorders. The very first one is constipation, hard, dry, infrequent stools. Second one, diarrhea, loose, watery, frequent stools. The third one is diverticulosis. Diverticulosis, in some industrialized nations, diverticulosis is common in older people. It is unusual in developing countries where people eat high fiber diets. And what diverticulosis is, you can see there's pouches along the colon, and a lot of people that have diverticulosis have to watch the nuts and seeds because these can actually get stuck in those pouches inside the colon. Heartburn and gastroesophageal reflux disease. This can be a problem because the acid from the stomach tries to creep up the esophagus and actually can cause heartburn. Also, irritable bowel syndrome, colorectal cancer, gas, and ulcers. Another one, dyspepsia. Here actually shows the cephalic phase response. You can see what the different stimuluses are. You're thinking about food, you hear food, you see food, you smell food, or you taste food, and what the response is in the body. The salivary glands start to increase saliva, cardiovascular system increases the heart rate and the blood flow. The GI tract increases the acid and digestive enzymes. The pancreas, insulin starts to get released, and the renal system, you have alterations in urine volume and the osmolarity. Next, we're going to talk about sphincters. Sphincters are movement from one section of the GI tract to the next. This is basically, you don't even know that it's happening when that peristalsis is going down into the esophagus. It pushes the food through the GI tract. There's actually sphincters. There's a cardiac sphincter between the esophagus and the stomach, and then there's also sphincter between the duodenum and the stomach. The duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. And so these sphincters are kind of like little doors. They're supposed to close and let the food in, but not let it go back. So a lot of times we see gastroesophageal reflux disease because of the cardiac sphincter. As that food goes from the esophagus into the stomach, a lot of times that door does not stay closed. So that hydrochloric acid in the stomach creeps up the esophagus and causes heartburn because you feel it by the heart, has nothing to do with the heart, but causes heartburn, or gastroesophageal reflux disease can occur from that. And then also when closed, the sphincter prevents from the duodenum into the stomach the backflow of material once it goes into the small intestine. This slide just explains more about peristalsis and segmentation, that pushing the food down and that back and forth movement. Enterohepatic circulation, it says during this recycling process, bile travels from the liver to the gallbladder, then to the small intestine where it assists in digestion. In the small intestine, most of the bile is reabsorbed and sent back to the liver for reuse. Down the wrong pipe, if you've ever swallowed, the epiglottis closes off the air passage and prevents choking. If you ever had a drink go down the wrong pipe and you choked, likely your epiglottis didn't completely do its job. The stomach churns and mixes foods with stomach secretions. Hydrochloric acid is what unfolds that protein and stops the salivary amylase action. And then pepsin begins protein digestion. And the pyloric sphincter, the little door between the stomach and the small intestine, moves that chyme from the stomach into the small intestine. Lactose intolerant, of all the world's populations, the Native Americans have the highest level of lactose intolerant. Short bowel syndrome. Those who suffer from short bowel syndrome have difficulty absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, so they also need to take B12 shots, and a lot of times they need a fat-soluble vitamin supplement. And chewing gum in colon cancer has helped with colon cancer. And we're going to stop here with chapter 3.